Hi Jerry, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I have, you can see here a little swelling around here. I've got 7 stitches in there. Had a tooth pulled out a couple of weeks ago, and on actually a month or so ago, and they had my first implant drilled into there yesterday. So I'm a little tender at the moment.
Is it
Forgive me.
giving you pain?
It did. Actually, no, I mean, it didn't hurt while they were doing it because I'm obviously numbed and stuff. But yeah, after the Novocaine wore off, wow, yeah. But they've given me painkillers. The dentist, when you walk out, the dentist, he gives you, you need some of this, you need, and there's like a week's supply of antibiotics. There's 4 fentanyls. These are really strong painkillers. And he said, don't take them if you don't need them. So I've got them. And from the last couple of treatments, I've still got some. So I took one last night, and it's a lot better now. But it's less
That's
than
good.
it's less than 18 hours old, so it's a little. Oh, yeah, if I move too far, don't make me laugh.
Yeah, that's all right. As long as you can eat properly, I guess
I'm slurping a bit.
it should be okay. Soup and
Mm.
noodles should be okay then.
Yeah, plenty of noodles here,
Yeah, that's all right. So
and
what's
I
been
can
happening?
still drink coffee.
Yes, that's good.
What's been happening in China?
Yeah,
Well,
what's
China's
been
sitting back
happening?
watching things.
Yeah,
It's not so much what's happening with China; it's what's happening around China. I think that's important. We had Mark Carney from Canada come over here. Interestingly, he spent 5 days here, which is quite a long state visit, and signed a lot of deals, some memorandums of understanding. I was hoping he would sign a BRI memorandum of understanding. He didn't, and then there was a lot of misinformation or misunderstandings about his deals. He's done some deals with China to restart the relationship that has been under strain, particularly since his predecessor upset the president of China, Xi Jinping. I don't know if many people, if your viewers would remember this. Xi Jinping said, you did the wrong thing, and walked away from a meeting with him, left him standing like a very sorry schoolboy. And I actually thought that was a little unstatesmanlike of President Xi. That should have been done behind closed doors. But I think it was. I don't know if he realized he was on camera doing it, but he certainly he put his feelings out there, and Canada got told, formally or informally, the country of Canada got told that their president had upset the president of China. So it's back on track now. And then Trump threatened 100% tariffs against Canada, and that's just Trump being Trump. He would never impose 100% tariffs, I don't think. But if China and Canada signed a free trade agreement, first of all, it would take years to do. Secondly, it's under the agreement they have with what replaced the NAFTA, and it was Trump that did that. Canada can't sign a free trade agreement with they call it a non-market player, but I think what they mean is a non-aligned player. If you're not America, Canada, or someone America says, yeah, it's okay, then you can't sign a free trade agreement with anybody. So that's kind of restrictive, I would say. But it was never on the cards that Canada and China were going to sign a free trade agreement. So that was not something to worry too much about. That was just the press beefing things up. It was Donald Trump getting his moment of um, bluster, which is really all it is, bluff and bluster. And then we moved on from there. And not tomorrow, yeah, tomorrow, Keir Starmer will arrive. Sir Keir Starmer will arrive in China for a 3 day state visit, which is more normal. But he's bringing with him 2 ministers and I believe more than 20 business leaders. So obviously, the UK is looking, I would say, very, very clearly to reset. They've just signed off on the new embassy, which, if they're calling it large, it's about half the size of the U.S. embassy in Beijing, which is interesting. But yeah, they're calling it a large embassy, which it is, and it's not going to be just the embassy. It's going to be shared by some different government, business, corporations, that kind of thing as well. So they need a big space. They've got a big space. They put forward their plans, and their plans have now been approved. And the usual voices that are Almost every single voice I've seen against this is funded by the National Endowment for Democracy in Washington. There you go. So Washington are the ones that are saying we don't want this, and they're using the mouthpieces that they employ in the UK to pursue it. If they didn't get paid by Washington, I'm fairly certain they wouldn't be getting involved in this discussion at all. So
There was an
that's happening
article
here.
yesterday I read that I think from UK claiming that all leaders from UK, I think leaders or ministers, something like that, their phones have been hacked by Chinese already,
Yeah, I saw
and
that
this
too.
Chinese embassy would be a spy hub. So there
Yeah.
have been articles coming like that every day in news now.
Every accusation is a confession. What you're reading there, if you're reading that in Australia, you're reading Murdoch's press. Murdoch's press is American. Americans actually do this. It's been proven that they do. Now, what they're saying is there are allegations. I don't think there's any evidence that this has ever happened. And if there is evidence, where is it? Why hasn't it been presented? Why hasn't the Chinese ambassador been called in and asked to explain this? Why isn't someone getting kicked out if they're spying on the British government? They're not getting kicked out because this is all speculative. It's all being paid for again by America. Got to understand this. This is not the world against China. This is America against China using the English and Euro speaking world. That's what they do. But the Prime Minister of Finland was here yesterday or the day before. Finland is probably the most precariously located country other than Ukraine in Europe because of the so-called threat from Russia, which has never been a threat, but another American perceived threat, which is thrust upon us to believe, oh, look, Russia is a threat. Russia is not a threat to anybody. It never has been, or never. It certainly hasn't been in Putin's time. And so, we're getting blasted with misinformation about two of America's least favorite countries, Russia and China. And it is misinformation. Imagine if somebody inside the government, really high up inside the government, were to have an argument with Trump and comes out and tells us, we'll get the truth. And Trump is not a very easy person to get along with. If you display loyalty to him, you're okay. He doesn't display any loyalty to you. He will shaft you in a moment. He's already done that with the head of his Department of Homeland Security, or he's in the process of shafting her. He's shafted the guy in charge of ICE in Minneapolis. He's just going to shaft anybody that he wants to shaft and to deflect blame from himself for. The ICE thing is a policy of his. He supports that policy. And now that things are happening, he's going to shaft the people in positions of power. So eventually someone will come out and say, well, he made me do it. And I can see that happening. And then it'll all start crumbling down.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. But I think all these spy agencies spy on each other anyway. I remember
Yeah,
watching a
I don't think there's
documentary. Yeah,
anything surprising about that. I think what is surprising is that they have come out with all kinds of allegations that appear to be just that, allegations, like everything else that they do. They're allegations. Uh, it really is. Everything that America does is based on allegations. They have their Fifth Amendment, which allows due process. They're alleging that these boats in the Caribbean are carrying drugs. No due process. They're guilty because we think they are. Bang, they're dead. I mean, they're murdering people for that. Everything that they say China does is something they actually do. They have done. They did spy on leaders of the European Union. They did spy on leaders of the UK. They do spy on everybody. And then they say, oh, look what China's doing. Okay, China is probably doing some of that too. I'm quite certain that China would have access to information that the Americans don't want them to have. That's the nature of the world we live in. It's not something sinister that China alone does. If we want to be sinister, let's look at the country that uses drugs to pay for and murder its own citizens by using those drugs to pay for its black operations. Now, that's not conjecture, that's not speculation, that's not an allegation. That's been proven, not just once or twice, but many times. This is what their intelligence community does in order to pay for the black operations that they want to keep outside of the books. So has China ever done that? There may have been allegations, but China has never poisoned its own country with drugs. UK and America did that, but China has never poisoned its own country with drugs in order to pay for something that it wants to do to another sovereign nation, which is exactly what America does all the time. This is not conjecture either. This is genuine. Even their own documentation proves this. They make movies about it in Hollywood, and this is based on a true story. Now, of course, they dramatize the movies, but the facts remain. Their CIA was doing it. Oliver North went to prison for it. This is the stuff that's going on. Colonel Oliver North went to prison, wrote a book about it. John Dean went to prison. All these people who go to prison for the things that the American government do wrong are just fall guys for the system. Yeah, so
Yeah,
that's America. When they make allegations, you've got to look at the wording of the allegations that they make. China has done, China could have done, China may have done, China has the ability to. Yeah, all of those things may be true, but China has done is a very, very different statement, and it requires proof.
yeah, yeah. There was a Edward Snowden comes to mind as well. Uh, the American spy. He exposed everything, and then he had to move to Russia. I
Yeah,
tried to get his
I
book a
like
while
what he
ago.
did.
Yeah,
I didn't approve of what he did, to be honest. Now, I like what he did, but I didn't approve of it. What the reason I didn't approve of it is because he had a commitment to his country. He signed whatever the Official Secrets Act is, the equivalent of the Official Secrets Act. And from my opinion, he's not a Julian Assange. Julian Assange and he were they were celebrities at the same time for very similar reasons. Julian Assange had a job. He had a commitment. He was a journalist. His job is to expose things like that. Edward Snowden. Now, don't get me wrong here. I actually approve of what he did. I do approve of his doing it, but he didn't have the rights to do it. He didn't have a job to do that. And in fact, he had signed documents to say he would never do that. So when people say, "Oh, Edward Snowden and Julian Assange are the same," I often say, "Well, no, they're not, because one of them had a job, a commitment to his readers, his public, to do something, and he did it. The other one had a commitment to his government not to do what he did, and then did it. Now, he did it all for the right reasons. He has become a hero to the American people, and he can't go back to America. Now, much as I dislike that process that caused him to be in that position, I actually approve of it. I'm a great believer. Sorry, I'm a great believer in the rule of law, the proper rule of law, not the rules-based order, but the rule of law. So if you break the law, you suffer the consequences. Now, if the law is bad, that's why we have democracy. That's why we have processes. You need to get that law changed. And that's what I dislike about things like the David McBride case. That was a very bad law that forced him into a position where he had to plead guilty and go to prison. And for any of you viewers not knowing who David McBride is the person who blew the whistle on murders by serving soldiers in Afghanistan. Australian soldiers were murdering people for fun, for sport, for target practice. They were murdering innocent people, and he exposed it. And so far, this is in the last 20 years, so far he's the only person to go to prison for exposing it, because he did expose state secrets. Wrong law, absolutely wrong law. That needs to be changed. And why that hasn't been changed by the lawmakers, who many of whom approve of what he did, many people in Australia's parliament at the time he was convicted agreed with what he did, not with the law that caused him to be convicted. So the laws need to be changed when they're wrong, and that was clearly wrong. Edward Snowden's law, I'm not sure whether it's wrong or not. America has the right to spy on anyone they want to spy on anywhere in the world, including their own country. Well, that's not a bad idea. There he is, David McBride, the whistleblower. Yep, he's still in prison and should not be. I've lost your sound. You're muted, Ali.
yeah, yeah. So not
Oh,
many people in Australia know about him. I got to know about him a couple of years ago when I saw some YouTube short documentary on him. So it hasn't been covered by any corporate media over here. Obviously, they don't really like whistleblowers over
Well,
here.
it's
Yeah,
been covered, but it's been covered in the wrong way. David McBride is a convicted criminal now, and he ought not to be. Any person of any integrity whatsoever should look at the David McBride case and say that was a miscarriage of justice. This is a guy. Okay, I think that what they got him on in the end was stealing paper, because he went through the system. He went through all of the system. He talked to his they call them superior officers. I don't like the word superior, but he talked to his hierarchy, and he went through that system, and he told people above him what the problem was. Then he went, when they said this is above your pay grade, leave it alone. Then he went to the Department of Defense, and they said, you need to go through the hierarchy. This is not our decision to make. This is not for us to make. You need to go back to the army and tell them. So he went back to the army and said, the Department of Defense said, I've got to tell you about it. And they said, we don't want to know. Drop it. It's above your pay grade. It's not something we want you to do. So he said, well, screw this. I'm going to expose this. And then he took paperwork out of his office and he gave it to a journalist. And the next thing you know, he's arrested. Well, actually, he left the country and then came back to celebrate his daughter's either homecoming or graduation or something that his daughter was involved in. And they let him in. They let him go to see his daughter. And then when he went to leave the country again, they arrested him.
yeah.
Sad and sick,
He's a
in
lawyer,
my opinion.
or he used to be a lawyer. So I mean, obviously, uh, if something like this happens, this happens all of the time. We know about it. It happened in Pakistan as well. I mean,
Yep.
extrajudicial killings, Afghanistan, Iraq, everywhere. Americans or Australians or these kind of UK, even UK, there are video evidence of that. Even Israel, well, but there's a lot of evidence for Israel, what Israel is doing, but that's a different case. But Australia, because uh, the person or the people or the soldiers who did those killings for fun, none of them ever got convicted. I think one of them had his medals removed. That's it. There was a
As far as I'm aware, he has one of them. Ben Robert Smith is a Victoria Cross holder, the highest medal given to a serving military officer or serving military personnel, the highest level. This is the one where generals will salute him, no matter what his rank. He was a corporal, and generals have to salute him because he wears this medal on his chest. He has been not convicted of murder, but he sued because people alleged that he was guilty in media, and he sued the media and he lost his case because truth came out. But he still hasn't been convicted. As far as I'm aware, he hasn't had that VC stripped from him or any of his other medals. So interesting to see where that will go eventually. It all kind of takes a back seat when there's government changes going on. They say, oh, this is not up to us. It was a previous government. But David McBride is still in prison and still serving time for something that was fundamentally the right thing to do. And the people who did the wrong thing are still out there. Quite a few of them apparently have committed suicide because they knew this was coming, and they were probably felt quite guilty about what they had done. I hope they did. But yes, a few of them have committed suicide already. And I'm sure they're being monitored and watched. The government knows who they are. The investigators know who they are. But the problem is putting them on trial. You need to get witnesses from an Afghan village. How do you do that? So there's a very difficult problem putting them onto trial. But they could all be exposed. They could all have been arrested, charged, and then never convicted. But then they could have had if they admitted what they did, they could be convicted. If they don't admit what they do, then they'll never be convicted because you
yeah, and
can't get the
also
witnesses to give evidence.
yeah, it's also in the best interest of government to keep quiet about it because it just ruins their reputation. And I mean, people now know that invasion of Afghanistan was illegal. But when these kind of things start coming out, some people doubt it even more, I guess. But they didn't just kill men, adults. They killed children as well for sports. Yeah, children who were running away from them. They sniped them. So that was one of the most horrendous thing. But that's just one case. There are thousands of cases like that from UK and American soldiers. But yeah, things
They
like
they
that don't
go
really.
they go
Yeah,
all the way back. As long as armies have been invading, they have been raping and pillaging,
yeah,
and it hasn't changed. Now they've got rules of combat, they've got rules of engagement, they've got military law, they've got civilian law. Armies do this. Um, I don't know about other armies. The Chinese army is it's very difficult to get into the Chinese army. You need to be the cream of the crop in your school, and they don't take any old person. A lot of kids grow up wanting to join the army, whereas in the West, including me, I joined the army when I was 16, junior army. And a lot of kids grow up thinking, what am I going to do? Oh, I'll join the army because it's an easy job to get into. And it was very, very easy. When you get in there, you find yourself sharing rooms with people who are very, very socioeconomically different, diverse. I shared a room, there's 10 of us in one room, and six of them from the Gorbals in Glasgow. Six people from the same area. They knew each other. I didn't know any of them. As far as they were concerned, this is the first time they'd ever had a bed to themselves, the first time they'd had 3 square meals a day, the first time they didn't have the police chasing them for all the things that they were doing wrong in back streets of Glasgow and the tenements. So these guys were laughing. Really, they loved this, but they were. I mean, they came from a criminal class. I don't mean that disparagingly. These were kids who grew up forced into a criminal class, and the army takes them on and says, oh, "We'll give you a job, we'll give you an education, we'll teach you how to shoot people, we'll take you out and do things." I mean, yeah, you get different specializations in the military, but if you're an infantryman, then particularly what you're going to get is the skill to kill people. Different skills, different ways, different methods, but you're going to learn how to kill people, and that's what you learn. You might learn how to operate radios so that you can instruct people how to kill people. You might learn how to operate a field kitchen so you can feed people while they're out there killing people. Whatever it is, that's their job. And China doesn't see it like that. It's a very, very different situation. The Chinese military are very honorable. You can't even get in if you've got a tattoo. If you've not been one of the top students in your school, you won't get into the military in China. It's a job with honor. It's a job with respect. And that's really what it ought to be. And it's designed to defend. China, since 1979, only once in my lifetime invaded another country. They were there for 27 days, I think it was. It was the 17th of February to the 16th of March, 1979, and they were there for less than a month, and then they came out. Job done. That was it. And yes, a lot of people died because it was a war. It was a conflict that was going on, and they served their purpose. They got out, and to the best of my knowledge, I think they regret it deeply now. They have a very good relationship with Vietnam now, but at that time it was border and fraught, and there was problems with Cambodia and Pol Pot and things that were going on. It was a very complicated time. Don't want to gloss over anything, but the fact was, it was an invasion that China took part in. Since then, they've never invaded anywhere. They are the world's largest peacekeeping force. That's what they do. They defend China and they keep the peace around the world where the United Nations asks them to. That's a good army. That's what armies are for. But when you're talking about invading Korea, Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos, both of which were neutral countries, both of which got bombed into oblivion almost. Then you start going into Libya, Syria, Nigeria, Somalia, Sudan, and the list just goes on. Venezuela and Pakistan, all the countries that they've literally invaded, many of them without any mandate from the United Nations, and all of them in contravention of the United Nations Charter. Then you've got a war, a country that is warlike. So very different wars. I just made a video about wars, actually.
that was yesterday,
China's,
right? Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
China's wars
Yesterday or
on
day before
poverty, war
yesterday, I
on,
saw that. Yeah.
yeah. So China's wars are beneficial to people. They don't even call them wars. They had a literacy campaign to improve literacy. Child literacy used to be like 4% when the CPC came to power in '49, and it's now 99.8%. something like that. There's 1 or 2% who will never learn. These are educationally subnormal people. You get them. They will never learn to read or write. There are 1 or 2 people who are very old who never learned to read or write. There are still people in China who can't speak, read, or write Mandarin, but they're all old and they all live in their regional communities where they can speak their
Yeah.
own language and they get along fairly well. But they may never ever be able to read or write. They're now 80, 90 years old or
Yeah.
older. So those kinds of people, even Mao, Chairman Mao, didn't speak Mandarin very well at all. When you listen to his Mandarin, it's definitely not standard. He's got a lot of Hunan, or we call it Hunan. He would call it Fulan accent. So yeah, it's very strong Hunan accent when he speaks Mandarin. So yeah, it's a huge country with different dialects, like the UK was when I was growing up, probably still is. I grew up in the far northeast as a Geordie. If any of you listeners know what a Geordie is, they wouldn't be talking like me. They'd be talking like that man. What are you talking about? So we have a
Mm.
very different accent where I came from. So the same thing happens here. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's the war on literacy, war on poverty, war on homelessness. There is no homelessness in China. They got rid of all of the slums. There are no slums in China anywhere. Now, there's people can argue and say, look at this, it's a slum. No, it's substandard housing, but it's not a slum. They didn't make it out of slabs of corrugated iron and cardboard. This is housing, but it's substandard, yes. But we're coming from the smallest economy in the world with the largest population into the highest spending economy in the world now. In terms of price purchase parity, China is there. It's top of the world.
Yeah.
We don't earn a lot of money here, but what we earn goes a long way. So yeah,
Yeah.
they've kept inflation down. They've risen the living standards. War on poverty. They rehabilitated 12 million drug addicts in 3 years. They completely eliminated the opium industry in China. Now, the opium industry in China was huge. We're talking about massive tracts of land set aside. It wasn't just imported by the West. That's a fact. The West did import China, but when Chinese people saw, oh, we can make money out of this, they imported poppy seeds and grew their own as well. So that had to be eradicated. It wasn't eradicated by the Qing dynasty, it wasn't eradicated by the nationalists, and it was eradicated in 1949. By 1952, it was gone. No more industry. Anyone who went into that industry faced very severe penalties, including execution. So the war on drugs, the war on poverty, war on illiteracy, it just went on and on and on. Everything that they did, and now we have what the goal now is called moderate prosperity. China is trying to get every single person in China up to a level where the World Bank says they're moderately prosperous,
Yeah.
and that's the target. They had a war on ecology, pollution. They had a war on poverty, corruption inside of their government, and we can see the results of that. That's another thing maybe we could talk about today. General Zhang being stood down. All
Yeah.
these things, they are continuums of what Mao Zedong started.
So what happened with the general? Seemed like it's a corruption case, but obviously
Mhm.
there are different stories.
Well, the West would love us to believe that he sold nuclear secrets. I very much doubt that is possible. I mean, I'm not suggesting it's not true. I'm suggesting that when the Wall Street Journal, not noted for its veracity, uses Ling Ling Wei or Wei Ling Ling, a Chinese, ethnically Chinese journalist who has been debunked several times before on her stories, when they're using her to write a story citing anonymous sources with knowledge of the incident, I would say that we've probably not got ourselves a true story. She may very well have seen the documents that prove this, but where did those documents come from? She got them from somebody inside of her Washington Beltway connections. So somebody inside of Washington has created a narrative that she's selling to the public, or she's creating a narrative with the consent of people in Washington to sell to the public. Um, People at this level, we're talking about the highest general in the PLA, the highest general. People at this level have got to this level through a process which included corruption in the past. Now, if there's no question about that, no one's going to argue that the PLA, the People's Liberation Army, was incredibly corrupt. Xi Jinping put a stop to that. He changed it. When I first came to China, shopping centers were owned by the PLA. Nightclubs, hotels, these are owned by the PLA. Now, what's going on in those hotels? Some of them had prostitution, some of them had KTVs, which is a code name for prostitution. Some of them had all kinds of different things going on. When I came to China, you could go into a KTV, a karaoke bar, and you could rent a girl for the night, for not for the night, for the entertainment session. So if you went in at 8 p.m. and left at midnight, you give the girl 200 RMB and she would leave. But she would be your entertainment. She'd open your drinks for you, cheers, look nice, maybe even a bit of fondling and petting. And then you made a decision to take her home or not take her home. That was what went on back in those days. And they had white powder on the tables and they had all kinds of different things going on. This was 20 years ago. I have no idea where to go to see that sort of stuff now. And I never personally, I'm going to defend myself here, protesteth too much. I went to those places and invariably left as early as I could because drugs and me, no way. I love a drink. I love the girls. You know, I love look at the girls and dance with them. It's great, fantastic. But then I want to go home. I don't want to go home with ketamine up my nose and stuff like this. So I would enjoy an aspect of it and observe the other aspects of it. And so it all stopped after Xi Jinping came to power. The military stopped doing that. They had to focus on building a better military. Now, the officers who did that put behind them what was standard operation procedure. You pay for your promotions, and the higher you go, the more you get to help people come up. Those kinds of things were operational procedure back in the day. This was systemic corruption. This wasn't individual corruption. Now, what then happened was Xi Jinping pretty much, and he didn't ever actually say this, but I think the inference was, we're going to stop this. You have to stop this. Those of you who don't stop this are going to get weeded out. We're going to find you and weed you out. Those of you who do stop this and change this into a proper military with the capacity to take on the Americans, which is something we may need to do in the future, then you're in the army. You've got the experience, you've got the credentials, you've got the background. We want you in the army. The higher you went up, the closer you got to the Politburo and to Xi Jinping himself, then the more trusted you needed to be. And in order to do this, I can assure you, if the Chinese government could spy on Keir Starmer or Liz Truss or anyone like that, surely they could do the same thing to their own generals. They would know what their generals are doing. Now, there are formal processes where recorded conversations take place between generals here and generals in Russia or generals in the UK or generals in America. This is a formal process. There's an informal process, but they are all known and declared. Any general who was talking to any American or even any other nation about nuclear power, nuclear weapons, nuclear capabilities, would either have recorded it or he would have been recorded doing it. So he would have been weeded out a long time ago, long before anything was passed to the CIA, unless what was passed to the CIA was fake. Now, if this was a general, he would have known what was real and what was fake. So I just don't believe it. I don't believe it's possible that he was sharing China's nuclear capabilities with CIA or American counterparts. He would have been far too closely monitored for that. And unless he's got, I mean, ideology, I don't think ideology would come into it because Americans wouldn't have any care for his ideology, and he wouldn't have care for theirs either. It's not like that. Some people in China have been removed from positions of power because they have someone in America very close to them. The head of Tsinghua University, his wife is an American citizen, Chinese born, lives in America, holds American citizenship. He lives in China. They're either not a proper husband and wife, or maybe he has some leanings towards America. Because why would she go to America, get citizenship, set up a home there, and have children living there in America with them? children are all adults now, but they're in America. So the head of Tsinghua University was stood down earlier this year. First week of the year, a lot of people, they call them, I think they call them naked officials. They're officials who have no protection because the Americans could utilize something against their wives, if their wives, their children take up American citizenship, go and live in America, then something needs to be done. So China said to all of these people a year or two ago, if you have investments in America, get them out. We don't want this. If you have connections to America, make a decision. You either want to be American or you want to be Chinese. If you want to be Chinese, you want your family to be Chinese. If your family and you cannot agree on this and they want to be Americans, then you can't be in a position of high trust, high level societal position here. So you can't be in the military with an American wife. You can't be, at least at the top of the military anyway, you can't be married to someone who has taken up citizenship of another country and gone to live there while you are in a position of some authority and some power and certainly a lot of responsibility. So that's what China did, and it's just stood them down. I think if this general was on the take, he would have been caught a long, long time ago. Many of them were. I think purely and simply, this is a political decision because the general says, "No, I don't want to. I don't agree with this." Okay. Now he's not in prison. He's been stood down. He hasn't been charged with anything. He hasn't been kicked out of the party, at least not yet. Now, until he gets kicked out of the party, he won't get charged with anything. So it could just be that he's just been stood down because he has a disagreement of opinion with the commander in chief. Now imagine an American general who has a disagreement of opinion with Trump. What's going to happen? Exactly the same thing. It's not a purge. It's just a simple case of I'm the president and I need my generals to understand my policy and comply with it. If they don't want to comply with it, they need to tell me and they can go. And if they pretend to comply with it whilst undermining it, they're going to go. That's going to be the same in any country, I'm sure. I don't think there's a country in the world that would allow their senior generals to undermine the national interest of the country. If the president has authority of the National People's Congress to make these decisions, and Xi Jinping does, then he'll make those decisions.
Yeah, yeah. I think it comes down to due loyalty as well. Like you were saying, if some Chinese or some Chinese family members who are in higher position in China, living in America, UK, it does come down to due loyalty. So again, it's China. It's their country, whatever policies they want to have. But there are a lot of Chinese investments in UK, in Australia. Australia, there are a lot of Chinese investments, especially when it comes to apartments. And most of those apartments, you see Chinese real estate agents everywhere in Melbourne CBD and in South Bank, where they build new
Yeah, but
apartments.
they're not selling to Chinese nationals in China. They're selling to Chinese nationals who are like my sister-in-law. My sister-in-law is married to an Australian. They've gone to live in Australia. She's a Chinese national, and she's bought an apartment in Australia. She's a Chinese national. She's got permanent residency now, and so she's gone to live in Australia. 5% of Australia's population are Chinese. That's a huge amount. 5%. And in some places, now you go outside of Melbourne and outside of Sydney and Brisbane to a lesser extent, there are certain areas in Brisbane, Sunnybank, for example, I would say Sunnybank's 80% Chinese. I mean, I don't know that for certain, but that's my view of traveling around Sunnybank. Every shop is a Chinese shop. Every home is owned by Chinese people. I used to do business in that area with Chinese customers and yeah, really lovely people. I have never had a problem with Chinese people, and I'm not sure why anyone else does. Chinese are not lifting the prices. Now, you mentioned investments, and this is something really interesting. USA invests a lot into the United Kingdom so that they can take ownership of their assets. China does not. China's investments in the UK and in Australia too have reduced over the last few years. Now, Murdoch Press won't tell you this. Murdoch Press made a huge announcement. This was probably 7 or 8 years ago. And it was at the beginning of the anti China campaign that they've been waging ever since. They made an announcement that China has bought up, or China has increased its holdings in Australia by 1,200% or something like that. I can't remember the numbers, but it was a huge number. And yes, they had. But what Murdoch Press had done is had taken one major acquisition, which was worth a lot of money, added it to China's total amount and said it's 1,000%, whatever the number was, it was a very high percentage. Yes, China had increased its holdings in Australia by a huge percentage, but it was only because of one or two acquisitions where they didn't take full ownership. They took 49% of a few companies. And the Australians retain control, which is what China likes to do, because it doesn't want to get involved in the legalities and the aspects. It doesn't want a controlling interest. It wants a shareholding interest. It will have influence with that kind of ownership. It certainly has influence, but it doesn't take full ownership of many organizations. Now, anyone can challenge me on this, and there will probably be a couple of companies in Australia where China owns that company outright, but it's quite rare. Most of the time, China has bought a controlling share or a share that's not controlling, 49%. Now, it may be that 49% is controlling if the other 51% is split, but China's only got 49% of the company. That happens a lot. And so it's not actually China taking control. Whereas if you take a look at what America owns your agriculture, America owns your financial institutions. America owns the buildings that your government work in. America owns your retail. Kmart is not Australian. Coles is not Australian. Woolworths is not Australian. You name it. Sainsbury's is not Australian. I don't know how many different. Asda is not Australian. All the different Aldi, German, but all the different companies that you can think of, they're not Australian. So what's the problem with China owning? And there was the other thing when they're saying China had increased its holdings by 500, 700, 900, 12,000%, I don't know, whatever the number was. But they'd also added Hong Kong to that. So Hong Kongers, yes, are Chinese, but they have a separate financial and legal system and have never been a problem until China was a problem. So Hong Kong's never been a problem. When you add Hong Kong to China, at the time they did this a few years ago, Hong Kong and China added together had 1.5% of all foreign owned assets. Not 1.5% of Australian assets, 1.5% of the assets that were foreign owned. And China was being blamed for everything that was going wrong in the economy at that time. So then the Foreign Investment Review Board announced that we're going to start investigating all Chinese investments. So Chinese investment in Australia almost stopped. It just became too difficult. So even since then, Chinese holdings in Australia have reduced. Now, you could argue that Chinese people are driving up the price of our houses, and that's an argument I've heard many times. It's absolutely, totally untrue. Asian people might be, but they're not all Chinese. Some of them are Japanese, some of them from Hong Kong, some of them from Malaysia. Take a look in Sydney, in Perth. Almost every Chinese person that you can find in Perth traces their roots back to Singapore or Malaysia. It's a 4-hour flight. So rich people in Malaysia are buying properties in Perth. That's not Chinese. These are Malaysians. Now, they may be Chinese ethnically, and they may have Chinese culture and Chinese traditions, but they're Malaysians. They're not Chinese. It's not the Chinese that's your problem, but you're being told by your media that China is a big problem for you. Go and ask your neighbor. I had neighbors. I lived in Five Dock in Sydney. My neighbors were all Asians, all around me. And this is an Italian community as well, but all my neighbors were Asians. But one was from Indonesia, the other side was from Vietnam. They weren't Chinese. I'm sure that it's the same thing going on now. Now, the fact is, Chinese business people who are wealthy can afford houses and homes in Australia, and that does put the price up when they go there to buy them. Now, your government can easily stop that and has done, because every time a Chinese person wants to buy property, it has to go through the Foreign Investment Review Board. Every time an Italian person wants to buy property, it's no problem. If an American wants to buy property, it's no problem. When a Chinese person wants to buy property, it has to go through the Foreign Investment Review Board. So, it's really, Australia has made a rod for its own back here, and it can fix all of this very, very easily. It chooses not to because populism. The Murdoch press lambasts China at every opportunity. ABC does the same, Channel 9 does the same, Channel 7 does the same. All of your mainstream media will give China a hard time in the media, but at what cost? Look what China is doing now. I'm surprised they couldn't pin the Bondi thing on China at all. There was nothing to do with China there, but I'm sure they would have looked for a link there. These guys once went to Hong Kong for a trip. Oh, yeah, look, they got trained there. Whatever. It just surprises me that they didn't try that. But yeah, the truth is, China is not your problem. Your media telling you China is a problem is the problem. Now, who funds your media? Washington, D.C. Again, we go back to that same thing. When your media is being funded by America and Murdoch Press, which is a huge component of all press, certainly local press, radio, television, paper media, Murdoch's got a huge component of it. And Kevin Rudd was trying to get rid of that until they offered Kevin Rudd a nice little plum position in Washington, and it all stopped. A lot of people invested money to get Kevin Rudd up and running with that, and I don't think anyone got their money back. Kevin Rudd had let the country down. He let his followers down. He let his people down. He let me down because I was following him, supporting him, and all of a sudden, bang, he's gone. And then he pops up in Washington as the Australian ambassador to the United States, a plum job, and now he's leaving Murdoch Press alone. Next thing you know, he's meeting Lachlan Murdoch. So yeah, he let everybody down. Money talked, or maybe they have something over him and they coerced him. I don't know, but I think offering him the plum job, and that is a plum job, being the United States ambassador, you can really enrich yourself. Ambassador to the United States, you can really be in on the money when it's going on. Insider trading is rife in that industry, the diplomatic industry. So, Rudd will come back to Australia a richer man. Murdoch Press are being left alone, and you're still getting bad news about China.
Yeah, it's because the influence of America is downplayed over here, but the influence of China is exaggerated, exacerbated in a way that comes across as a negative influence. Um, and Obviously, most of the students that come to study in Melbourne universities or Sydney universities are Chinese, mainly because they've got money and they can afford the education. Which is why if you go to Melbourne CBD, you see all these Chinese restaurants, and then you'll have Chinese New Year celebration as well for 2 or 3 days over here
Yep.
in Melbourne CBD, which is really nice. They keep everything clean. But even when I was a student, I was living with a Chinese girl who was a student, Korean, Colombian girl, Indian guys as well. So a Chinese professor also. So it was a big house, so we all used to live together as students. So there are a lot of international people or international students or professors come here to study or to give lectures.
Australia is like that. Australia has always been, in my opinion, a welcoming country to international students, is a welcoming country to international visitors, and particularly to internationals who qualify to live there. I was a foreigner. I'm British. I know British culture, Australian culture. They're not the same, but we're white Anglo-Saxons, so it kind of fitted in quite well. But once you're in Australia, I found that you can experience a lot of racism. It's jocular. It's come on, mate, can't you take a joke? That kind of thing when you get offended by this, but it's not a joke when you hear it every single day, and you would have experienced this, I'm certain yourself. Uh, that's the one aspect of Australia that I've never liked. They don't realize that they're racist. They say, well, look at us. We take guests in from everywhere. And that's true. They do. But then when they take them in, they then disparage them because they're not white Australians or they're not white Anglo Saxons. And I think it's a generation away. And it's not helped by the division in politics when you get the Pauline Hansons coming along. When Pauline Hanson first started, I thought, yeah, she's got a couple of points. She wasn't looking for. She wasn't like the National Front in the UK. She wasn't looking for a white Australia as such. What she was looking for was equality throughout, no matter where you come from, no matter who you are. If you're Australians, that's what One Nation stood for back in the day. But I think she took some pretty bad advice, and she's gone in the direction of the white supremacists. She's gone in the direction of the Trumpists, the Republicanists, and in the UK, the Faragists. These are the extremists inside of mainstream politics. They're extreme right, or some of them are extreme left, but most of them are extreme right. You don't get many lefties in Australian politics. Australian politics is very central to the extreme right and very little on the left. So that's putting labels on people. I know there are one or two people who are lefties, and they usually gravitate towards the Greens because there's no communist or Marxist or socialist party that has really emerged out of Australia. The Citizens Party is probably the closest, and I'm good friends with Robbie Barwick, who's the chairman of that party now. And yeah, I support the Citizens Party, but I'm not in a position to vote, so I'm off the voters register now. So it's a very strange world that you're living in Australia, a world of assimilation but separation. Not quite segregation. Certainly, there's no apartheid or anything like that, but there's definitely separation between the races. It used to be the Italians and the Greeks, then it became the Vietnamese and the Lebanese, and now it's the Chinese and the Japanese and whoever else. We all get stuck, tarred with the same brushes, being foreigners, not Australian.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But Australia, on general, it's a good country, I guess. I mean,
Oh yeah,
my neighbors are one of them is German, one of them is Australian, one of them is Polish Australian, then Chinese. So
that's what I love
everybody's
about
married
Australia.
there.
Wherever you
Yeah,
go, you're going to meet someone with a diverse background. One of
yeah,
my best friends is Croatian. He and I still talk. I mean, I've left Australia 22, nearly 22 years. And he and I still talk on a regular basis, and I'm keep inviting him here. He is coming via Hong Kong to go somewhere else, back to Serbia actually, Croatia. When he's traveling, I said, "Stop off in Hong Kong. You don't need a visa. Come and see me." I haven't seen him in 20 years. No, I've seen him. I went when I was back in Australia. I saw him, but yeah, a good friend of mine. So you get these things that. Yeah, my cousin is married to a Greek guy. This in Melbourne. There's a lot of Greeks in Melbourne. There's a lot of Italians
yeah.
in Sydney, and I kind of
Melbourne as
love
well.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah. I used to like living in Five Dock. Anyone who knows Sydney would know Five Dock. I would walk down the Great North Road, which was just round the corner, and walk down to the Italian delis on a Saturday or Sunday morning and just pick up all that fantastic stuff that they had on the counter there. I'd have some of that, some of that, some of that. And we'd have great lunches, just like antipasta lunches. Fantastic. I loved living in that area. I love that assimilation of it. And then there's issues as well. Some of the Somalians were coming in when I was just as I was leaving. We got a bunch of Somalian neighbors. I invited them to a barbecue. I was having a barbecue in the back, and the Somalian's tall guy leaning over the fence. "Oh, what's going on?" It's a very strange accent that I can't do. And I said, "We're having a barbecue. Come on over." And they drank beer. They didn't eat the pork, but yeah, they were okay with having burgers and sausages. I don't know what was in the sausages. I never told them, but they enjoyed themselves. And now we got along well with the Somalian neighbors. First time I'd ever met a Somalian. So yeah, that was interesting. I love living in Australia for that.
yeah, yeah. It's a nice country, a peaceful one also. Uh, uh, but I guess politicians change to what the popular policy or what the popular sentiment is, I guess. I've
Well,
only ever found
sadly,
two or
that is
three.
true.
Yeah. David
Mm,
Pocock from Tasmania. He used to be a rugby player.
right.
He's very level headed, but I think he's independent.
Mm.
So, yeah, but there
Another
are
one
not many
is
who like him.
Shoebridge. Shoebridge is a
Yeah,
good
you can
guy, I
say
think.
Shoebridge. Bob Carr was really good. I mean,
I like Bob Carr. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
He's kind of very. Um, uh, what's the word I would use here? He likes China. I wouldn't say that he's pro China. I would say that he understands the complications of dealing with China quite well, much more so than Kevin Rudd ever did. To my opinion, Kevin Rudd doesn't understand China at all. He certainly doesn't understand Xi Jinping. He thinks he does, but he does it through the lens of a Western diplomat rather than through the lens of a person who lives in China. It's very easy to live in China and not live in China, if you know what I mean. When you're a diplomat or a journalist, you tend not to live in China. You tend to live in an expat bubble. You might be in Shanghai, Beijing, even Guangzhou has these expat bubbles where you go. Your nearest bar is an Irish bar. Your nearest restaurants are Italian and Greek and Lebanese and Turkish. You don't go to Chinese restaurants when you're living in these enclaves of foreigners. And I found that people who live like that don't really understand China in the same way. I'm not saying they're wrong about China. I'm saying their interpretation is different to mine because their experiences are very different to mine. I should do a video and just show my followers where I live. I've never done this, but I think I might do this now. This is where I live in China. I don't live in a fancy apartment. It looks quite nice, but this is a very old apartment. It's not as old as me. I'm 67. It's not quite as old as me, but it's been brutally renovated. Everything was gutted, and I paid for this when we moved in. And I'm in my studio now, which you can see is kind of modern studio with lights and things. And my wife has a prayer room where because she's Buddhist, and she has a room set up with her books and her mantras and stuff. And then we've got a bedroom. That's it. That's our apartment. It's very small. It's 80 square meters, and it's in China. You walk out of my apartment, you're in China straight away. The shop, there's a school across the road, there's a school behind us. We get the school music and the school parades and assemblies. We live in China. We don't live in the expat part of China. I bought this apartment for 550,000 RMB, spent another 170, nearly 200,000 RMB doing it up. So we got an apartment that's worth, I would guess, 150,000 Australian dollars, 3-bedroom apartment, quite nice. Has an Australian standards kitchen. I
Yeah, that's
designed the
pretty.
kitchen by Australian standards, so it's kitchens in China are very low. I find I can't prepare food and wash dishes
Yeah,
because they're all too low for me. Even tall, there's a lot of tall Chinese, but they just get used to this all their lives, and I can't do that. So we don't have a squat toilet here, which a lot of, particularly in public, Chinese like to use squat toilets rather than sitting on toilet. At home, most Chinese at home have a what we call a proper toilet, a Western toilet.
mm,
But most Chinese, when they go out, would much prefer not to sit on somebody else's toilet seat. I get that. I'm okay with that. I can use a squat toilet. I have no trouble going down, bit of trouble getting up again because I'm getting on. The knees are not as good as they used to be.
yeah. I guess that's a good price for a three-bedroom apartment, 157,000 Australian dollars, I guess. But you
Well, you
do
did the
get,
calculation there.
yeah, yeah, that's
Yeah.
a good price because the housing prices over here are increasing. They're gonna keep on increasing anyway because there's no solution is being offered at this point, and
Mm.
the population will keep growing. Even though Australia has a lot of land, it's not. Uh, they're not using it
Target.
in a smart and wise
Yeah.
way, I guess.
No, the
But
target
a lot
is
of
30 million, isn't it, for Australia?
yeah, 23 million or something
That
like that. Yeah,
Yeah, I think the target is to get to 30 million, but
yeah,
that would make it about the same size as the city of Chongqing.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But the quality of infrastructure is not good over here for some reason.
No.
Yeah, I can understand why, because they don't really have a mindset for innovation or improvement, I guess. Which is why I think China builds better infrastructure, mega infrastructures as well. And when it comes to micro projects like equipment, robotics, electronics, China is very good at that as well. But I see in addition to politicians, I see a lot of YouTube videos now. Maybe it was an intentional drive by YouTube or by someone to push those videos to people. Very, you can say, anti-immigrant and
Yeah.
anti-Muslim as well. Even though, I
Yeah,
mean,
I can see
I
that
mean, I'm
happening.
okay with free speech. If you're anti-Muslim, it's okay. Yeah, people can be anti-Muslim. You can be anti, or call it Buddhist, Jew, or Christian as well. But I see a certain type of videos being pushed every day. And at first I thought Pauline Hanson was a trans person because she didn't look like a female to me. Because I thought that will be really good. Australia will have, or the world will have its own first trans leader. But then I realized
It may
she,
come out later. It may
yeah,
come out as a truth later on. I don't think
yeah.
so, though. Yeah.
Maybe she has
She,
aged really badly, I guess, or whatever it is.
well,
Yeah,
she spent time in prison. That can't be healthy. I mean, in all honesty, she's possibly. I don't like her at all. I'll be honest, but she's possibly the most misunderstood person in Australian politics. And I remember reading her inaugural speech when she was first elected. We're going back probably 30 years or so. And she made her maiden speech. And I didn't see it, but I downloaded it from Hansard or got a copy. I don't think I downloaded back then, but I got a copy of it from Hansard and read it. And I thought, she actually makes a bit of sense. This woman who's been disparaged in the media is making sense. You can find this. Go online and just search now for Pauline Hanson's maiden speech, and it goes back. I'm not sure what year. It was probably 1990 something, and her maiden speech was actually quite reasonable. And I thought, why is she? Why do the press hate her so much? Well, they hated her because she was outspoken. They hated her because she was a redhead. They hated her because she wasn't beautiful and still isn't, and maybe looks a bit like a man. I don't know. I hadn't thought about that, but I get it. But whatever the reasons they hated it, now they're kind of courting her a little bit. I can see Pauline Hanson holding. This is frightening thought to me. Holding the balance of power in Parliament, and that is quite worrying. Particularly if the Nationals and the One Nation parties come together in some sort of coalition. Now that the Lib National coalition has fallen apart or is falling apart, I mean that might be salvaged with a new leader. But Andrew Hastie is not the leader that can do that. I think Christian fundamentalists should not be leading countries in the same way that Iranian fundamentalists shouldn't be leading countries. I think religion and politics should be kept very well aside. But I mean, I grew up in the UK where for 1,000 years religion had ruled the country rather than the politics. Kings who were given the God given right to rule there and then appoint lords and masters of the manor, so everybody else was just a serf to them. It's all wrong. I'm very much in the socialist side of things. I've never read Karl Marx, but I think I agree with what he was trying to do. And I don't see myself as a political analyst in any way at all. So don't get me wrong if I got this wrong, but I do believe that socialism, the way China does it, works pretty well.
yeah.
Yeah,
Most of these
I see
politicians
there
have
are some
sound
problems.
bites. Yeah, most of these politicians have sound bites, but when you try to understand their policies, they're vacant on the policy front,
Yeah.
and 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 a half-educated person would know that what they're talking about doesn't really make sense. I mean, the sound bites make sense, but when you try to dig deep, how they're going to implement it, what the execution would look like, who will it impact? Yeah, you
Well,
realize that
that's
it's yeah,
That's very much the difference between a Western politician in what they call the democratic countries. And I do this because they're not very democratic. That's the topic of my next script, which I'm partway through writing now. You don't get the freedom of choice in the West that they say you've got, and we have this. We have freedom. I can buy an American car, or I can buy a Chinese car. I can buy an American phone, or I can buy a Chinese phone, or I can buy a Korean phone or a Japanese phone, whatever I can choose. But in America, they don't have that choice, so they don't have the freedom. But the difference between our politicians is that in China, you cannot become there's actually really no such thing as a politician in China, although they would have what we term political skills. There's no such thing as a politician. These are bureaucrats. These are people who've worked from, and in fact, right up to Xi Jinping, almost every single person has worked from the rural regions as a a farmer, as a laborer, as a factory worker, or something like that, and then they've worked through the systems that they have there. Now, they may not be farmers; they may be supervisors of an agricultural project. So they've gone, they finish university, they go to the countryside, they help develop some kind of project in the countryside, and when it's successful, they get promoted, and then they can do the similar sort of thing. Now, this guy who does that could end up in 40 years' time as the leader of China, but in the process of getting there, they've gone through several different training courses. So first of all, they've all got bachelor degrees, at least. Most of them have masters, some have PhDs. I was told the other day that Xi Jinping has a PhD, but I wasn't aware of that. I mean, I don't know if that's true or not, but I was told that. So anyway, they go through a range of different educations. Now, one of those educations is they have to learn how to manage society. So they go through civil service tests. They have to pass a test to get into the civil service. Once they're in the civil service, then they can be promoted. But you only get promoted in China, you get promoted not because you're recognized by above, you're pushed up from below. Your peers vote for you to be their supervisor. Now, you need to be selected before you are elected. So I can't just go in and be elected because I'm popular. I'm selected by the bosses. They say, we're going to promote this guy or this guy. Who do you want? To the peers. And that's how it works in governance as well. So these people go through this selection and election process to get higher up. Then, when they get higher up, they have to go back to college and they have to maybe study Marx, or they have to study socialism, or study Xi Jinping's socialism in the new era, or study socialism with Chinese characteristics. And they get their master's degree in something that helps them in governance. So now they're qualified in their field of agriculture or their field of sciences. Then they're qualified in the fields of governance. And then they get promoted. And before you know it, they're heading up their party secretary of a province. You know, this is a 25-year program getting from university to the top of a province. Once you're at the top of a province, and if you're doing a good thing and your province is going well, they'll move you to a bigger province, or they'll move you into the Politburo or somewhere in Beijing at the head of a department, the head of at levels that we can't even think about. Then you can get called into the Politburo. Then you're in governance. You're not in bureaucracy anymore. You're in proper governance. And then from the Politburo, you get promoted to be the president of China. Now, one person out of 1.4 billion people is going to be the next president of China. But that person will have gone through every single step that Xi Jinping went through. And Xi Jinping went through every single step that Hu Jintao went through. And Hu Jintao went through every single step that Jiang Zemin went through. And so it goes on. So the next person is going to be equally as qualified, may have different policies, different ideas, but they're not going to get up there unless they have the support of their peers. And then to get to the very top point, the National People's Congress appoints them. The National People's Congress is given a choice. Vote for this guy or someone else. They will choose. And the National People's Congress, who elects them? My wife does. My wife elects the person who votes for the next president of China. So you say there's no democracy in China. That's about as democratic as they come. 99% of people aren't interested in geopolitics. They're interested in, what's the parking like outside? Do I have to pick up my kids from school at this time or that time? Who's gonna look after this shopping center and build this development? They're interested in what's happening around their own home, and they're getting that because the local government, which is all part of the national government, the local government has its own two sessions right now in Guangdong. Today in Guangdong, the two sessions are sitting. In another month or so, the two sessions will sit in Beijing. Maybe a little bit later than a month because Chinese New Year is very late. But in March, the two sessions will sit in Beijing. All of the leaders of Guangdong, all of the leaders of Guangxi, all of the leaders of Xinjiang, all of the leaders of every other province and region will go to Beijing for the two sessions being the biggest lawmaking decision platform in China. So that's how it works. No such thing as a popular president. There's no such thing as a popular senator or a congressman. The people who get elected to go to those meetings are people who have proven and done something they've achieved. So every single person in China has achieved something before they move up to the next. You don't get it on promises, you get it on results. So that's why China is much better managed, is much better run, and it doesn't change every 5 years. Every year there is a meeting, and every 5 years those meetings have the ability to vote on the leadership. So Xi Jinping, after 5 years, got voted. The first 5 years, he got voted a second term. During that second term, the National People Congress said, we don't need to limit this guy. We don't need to limit anyone because we have the ability to get him out. Deng Xiaoping put that in as one of his reforms because he saw what happened when Mao went on too long. And that's fair enough. I accepted that that was a good decision. Now the National People's Congress has the power under the Constitution to remove the president if the president doesn't perform. So the National People's Congress can do this. So they will go to Beijing once a year and they can vote. Someone can submit a resolution. We think Xi Jinping's no longer good for the job. Let's remove him. Of course, that's up to the people who are there to vote on this. Now, I would suggest that not one person, maybe there may be some people who don't like it, but not one person that I know have ever met in China yet says, nah, he's not a good president. He's a little weak on America. He should take over Taiwan. He should challenge Japan on what they're doing. He should tell the Australians to go get all of these things that people say, but not one person has ever said to me, I don't think he's a good president. They might say, I don't like him. His wife's nice. That's the kind of thing you get. No, I don't like him very much, but his wife's really nice. That's what you hear when you question people about Xi Jinping. They like him very much here, and the very few people that don't like him will caveat that with, but his wife's really nice. She's very famous. Before he was Xi Jinping, she was much more famous than he was. Very popular singer. So these guys are not like Australian politicians, not like American politicians. They're not lawyers unless they are. Some of them are lawyers, and they are there because their legal credentials get them there through the same system. Some of them are farmers, some of them are engineers, some of them are chemists, some of them are lawyers, some of them are doctors. They are what they are. Now, the people who are doctors are looking at policies inside of the medical. The people who are engineers are looking at policies for infrastructure. The people who are lawyers look at the protections and the legal matters that surround them. They all have their own job to do, and it's related to their speciality until you get to the very top when you have to do everything.
Yeah, it's meritocracy combined with voting, I guess. That's the Chinese system. So if you have to compare it with American Australians' experience versus popularity contest or something like that, that's how you
Yeah,
would describe it. I'll share a screen with you, and this is something
sure.
I think. Are you seeing the screen now?
Yes, I am. You cannot look the other way.
Yeah, I mean, I found this video hilarious. Something that we
I
were
haven't
talking
seen this.
about earlier. I think he's Australian.
Amazing self-correcting machine. America is not going to make the same mistakes that it made in... America is an amazing self-correcting machine. America is not going to make the same mistakes that it made in Iraq and in Afghanistan. Those regime change operations failed, but America is learning. So this one is going to be different. No boots on the ground. There is a popular movement on the ground by the indigenous people. So let's prop up the Shah as a unifying factor who's going to keep things in control. And we're not going to see an even worse regime come out of that. The point that I'm trying to make is that we need an interventionist America. We need them. And my dear American people, whether you like it or not, you have the greatest military might in the history of humanity. And with that great power comes a great responsibility. There is one country, Iran, that wants to be part of that Western bloc. Their people are sick and tired of being propped up as anti-West or anti-America. They don't want to be part of that. They want to join the Western bloc. This is why I love Ukraine as well, because Ukraine wants to be a part of the Western bloc. They don't want to live under the thumb of authoritarian Putin's Russia. They want to be part of the Western bloc. And so does Iran. An old woman, a disabled man, a child is being tortured and brutalized by an evil mullah. You cannot look the other way. America is an...
So,
What's to
yeah,
say?
America is a self-learning machines. They're not going to make the same mistakes they made in Iraq and Afghanistan. But even before Iraq, there was Vietnam and all that kind of stuff. People are just stupid, I guess.
I think Venezuela, they've already done this. They self-learning.
But there's no
I
regime
find,
change in Venezuela. The regime is still the same, so
yes, the
nothing has
regime is
changed.
still the same, but they had a very good reason for doing that because they've threatened her regime. And this has come out since where she said, we were told you've got 15 minutes to make a decision. You're either with us or against us, and if you're against us, we're going to kill you. Well, that's illegal to start with. You can't do that. What the action they were taking was illegal. They were invading a sovereign nation. Then they kidnapped. So there's different degrees of illegality and several different. I mean, if you're a lawyer and you wanted to look at this from a legal perspective, you just it doesn't stop. There are so many acts of illegality going on there, all the way up the chain, right the way up to the very top. The person who authorized this has broken international law. The person who executed this, even the planning of this is a conspiracy. So, yeah, you could say any type of future military planning is contingency, and you should do that. But once you start planning to execute that, then you are part of an accessory, or in English, we'd say aiding and abetting your conspiracy to commit a crime. So, if you know that what you're doing is a crime and you're planning it as a hypothetical, I could plan to rob a bank. There's no problem with that. If I bring my friends in and say, look, we're going to rob this bank, and start planning it and get the drawings out, all this sort of thing, none of that is a crime until we intend to rob the bank. It's a hypothetical. Let's hypothetically say this. Could we rob this bank? Yeah, we could. We could do this. We could do this. Yeah, it might be drinking wine and suggesting it. Now, we could be arrested for that conspiracy, but we can only be charged and convicted if they can prove we intended to carry it out. If we were just having a hypothetical discussion over a glass of wine, that's fine. And I believe the same thing applies in military planning, military operations. Let's plan a contingency if we're going to invade Venezuela. No problem with that. We need to know that our military has the capability. This is what we do. This is how we do it. This is okay. But you don't call it Venezuela. You give it a hypothetical name, and then you say, we're not planning to invade Venezuela. But then as soon as you need to, you just cross out the name that you gave it and call it Venezuela, and then you implement the plan. Then it becomes a conspiracy because you plan to do this to Venezuela. If you plan to do this to a hypothetical country, that's part of military operations. They self-learning. I don't know that they've learned very much because they keep on doing it, and it does keep on failing. Afghanistan did fail, so why did they bother? The joke, $2 trillion in 20 years to replace the Taliban with the Taliban. It's a fact. It's not a joke. It's funny, but it's a fact. But it's not funny for the hundreds, thousands of people who died actually probably tens of thousands of Afghanistans died, and the thousands of Westerners who really shouldn't have been there. And if you think about it, 90% of the people who were there as soldiers had no real clue why they were there. They were following their orders. They were told this is what you have to do. They didn't know they were doing this for the benefit of, what? For the benefit of what? I don't know. Why did they go to the Vietnam War? I still have never yet found anyone who can justifiably tell me that Vietnam was a good war. They say, oh, it's to stop the spread of communism. Okay, why was that necessary? Well, communism is bad. Can you explain that to me? Well, it's authoritarian. How does that affect you and your country? Why did you go 12,000 miles across the ocean to stop the spread of something that you think is bad? Well, it would have domino affected. To where? It might have domino affected all the way down to Singapore, but that's nothing to do with America. It could have gone through Malaysia and Thailand. It could have done. But what's that to do with you? I cannot yet find. You asked the question why several times, and you drill down to one single point. We did it because we were told to do it. Why were you told to do it? There's the point. Why were you told to go to war in Korea? Why were you told to go to war in Vietnam? Why were you told to go to war in Iraq, Afghanistan? Why are they bombing Nigeria? Why would they do that thing in Venezuela? Why? This is the big thing. And until you can find out that why, you shouldn't be doing it. And really, soldiers who are trained, I prefer the word indoctrinated, but trained to kill an enemy, whether that enemy is real or not, doesn't matter to the soldier because they've been told they're your enemy. But in order to justify a war, this is where China looks at it. We have to say, if we're going to go to war at that place, what are we going to do there, and why are we going to do it? America is not a self-learning machine. It's definitely not self-learning. What it's done, it's learned very valuable lessons, but it keeps repeating the same mistakes. Venezuela, I think, was a mistake. And it's not going to stabilize Venezuela. We'll see that. That'll come. Iran, taking over Iran. How long is it since they took over Iraq? Iraq is not stable. Afghanistan actually is quite stable because there's no Americans there. There's no Americans left there. They got defeated well and truly. Now, in Iraq, they didn't get defeated, but they just couldn't win. In Vietnam, they didn't get defeated. They couldn't win. Now, people will argue, oh, we could have won. We could have just nuked them. If that's the best argument that you've got, then that's not really a win. That's just showing how bad you are. You want to nuke millions of innocent people who don't have a gripe against you, who you don't have a gripe against, just because they happen to have different face, live in different kinds of huts and houses. I don't know the answer to this. Why are we doing this? And I say we because I'm Anglo-Saxon, white, and my race has done this mostly.
Yeah, but you see all these kind of videos popping up on YouTube, so I'm not sure how far that would go, but it's not going to do
That's why I
anything.
don't watch much YouTube.
Yeah,
I'm on it, but I
yeah,
don't watch much.
yeah. But the algorithm certainly changed since December last year. You see a lot of these
Did you
kind of
notice how?
videos.
Did you notice how TikTok has changed?
I don't have TikTok. I mean, I don't use social media much. I just use YouTube. That's it. I don't even have Twitter or
Okay.
anything. Yeah, but
Oh, and
TikTok, I
TikTok,
have
you
no
can't write
idea.
the word.
But I
You can't
read
write
the
the word
news
Epstein now.
articles. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, you can't write the word Epstein now. It goes against their guidelines. I think you're struggling to write Palestine now. You can write
yeah,
Hamas, but you can't write Palestine.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
if
That's true.
that affects people, in theory, it was only supposed to affect the United States. But what it's done is it's caused a mass exodus. The first threat of closing down TikTok caused a mass exodus to Chinese platforms. Now there's this thing called Upscroll, which I believe is a Palestinian platform. Now,
Palestinian
I'm not on it.
Australian. Yeah, Palestinian
Yeah,
Australian. Use
Palestinian Australian.
Australian.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I'm not on it, but because I'm on TikTok, but I don't really use TikTok very much. I've got 11,000 followers now, and
that's pretty
I
good.
put
Yeah,
yeah, I know. I just plonk videos on there. I don't follow anybody. I don't use it. I just thought, well, if I'm going to get my message out to as many people as possible, I should be on there. I'm not on Instagram. I am on Twitter. My Twitter account just got banned. I'm banned from Twitter. At least one of my accounts. I had two. So yesterday I went on and it said there's been a login with suspicious login. Please log in correctly. So I had to log in using my password. It says this password is invalid. No, it's not. That's my password. I know what my password is. This
must be
password's
hacked,
invalid.
I
And then,
guess. Yeah,
yeah, it could have been. So
yeah,
then it said, we're going to open a new account for you. So I don't want a new account. And
yeah,
I tried to click to get out of it. And it put me in. It gave me a password, which I don't even know, put me in there, and then said, this is your account now. And I have
yeah,
0 followers. I have zero, I'm following zero. And I have one post, which was the last post that I put into the other. So they know who I am. I
yeah,
put this
yeah,
post into my Jerry's Take on China, and it's now on, my platform was just called Jerry Gray. I didn't do this. It
yeah.
did this to me. So now I have 0 followers on that platform. I had 32,000 followers. They've all gone. Or
Oh,
I can't access them. I'm going to try again. I mean, we started this early this morning, so I haven't had an opportunity this morning to try and log on to my
yeah.
original
I
with
hope they
my
fix it.
original password. Yeah,
Yeah,
so do I.
yeah.
So do
I
I.
was listening to Professor
Otherwise, I've
Jeffrey
lost
Sachs
that.
this morning. Yeah, he was saying that he was also talking about TikTok. He was saying that TikTok, probably why America was so interested in TikTok was because it exposed the genocidal intent of America and Israel, and it showed honesty in the genocide in Palestine, which is why I think they bought it. And he was talking about the same thing. I mean, I didn't know Upscroll, but I heard him say that people are exiting TikTok and they are going to another platform. But if it's Australian Upscroll, Australia has stricter laws, so and there is a lot of Israeli influence over here. So that
Yeah.
platform will be probably not banned, but will be controlled as
Yeah.
well. Yeah,
We shall see what we shall see.
because I was listening
I don't
to
know.
uh, Jonathan Greenblatt. I think he's the head of ADL in America. He was saying that
Hmm.
they are even influencing and controlling DeepSeek and Alibaba's AI to
Really?
yeah, I have a video of it. I'll show it to you later. I'll send it to you after this conversation. So they have done it to to OpenAI, Grok, and all these American language models, and they are uh, uh, aggressively influencing and controlling Chinese language models as well, so they don't go against Israel. I mean, they say don't go against Jews, but
Right.
there are many Jews over here who don't really like Israel's genocidal policies. So I think all it is they're changing history. They're trying to
Yeah.
create their own
I,
history. Yeah,
I just
just
went
like
to
what.
look at my TikTok account
Yeah,
while you were talking there. I
yeah,
had you as a mini screen there, and it's all still intact,
that's
TikTok.
good.
And I just scrolled down the videos. None of them have been removed. So I don't really speak much on Palestine.
Yeah,
I very rarely mention Gaza or Ukraine. These are not really my fields of
yeah,
expertise. Although I've expressed opinions on them, that's all they are. So I'm okay on TikTok right now, but I'm still.
that should be
I just
okay.
checked that I'm still off on Twitter. So my or X, I should say, not Twitter. But Upscroll is an interesting one because several of my friends have gone across to it already, and they're telling me that you should try it.
Okay.
You should try it. But for me, it's neither here nor there. I don't come on this to make money or anything like that. I mean, it's nice if you can. Um, there's an interesting thing. I talk about YouTube suppressing me. I watch very carefully, watch my analytics. Even though I've been on there a few years, I still daily check my analytics. And I found sometimes my likes have been removed. So what's happening here? Somebody is removing my likes. It's not me removing them. Somebody else is
Mm,
doing that. So it is possible that you can hit the like button twice and it removes the like. I
correct.
get that. So you can hit the like button and it removes the like. So you can actually hit a dislike button if you want to. So if halfway through something your opinion changes, oh, I thought he was good now. No, this guy's talking whatever. I'm going to hit the dislike button. Then you lose the like. Yeah, I get that. You can lose a few likes. Subscribers are being removed. And subscribers are telling me, I was following you and I'm not following you
Yeah,
anymore. Now I'm following you again and they've removed me again. And
yeah,
I had one guy said, I tried 6 or 7 times to subscribe to you. And every time I subscribe, the next time I come online, I'm not subscribed. So I'm giving up. So that's happening to me. And here's another one. Views are being reduced. Now you can remove your like, but you can't remove your view. It's either been seen or it hasn't been seen. They cannot count a view as less than the day before. So I look at this and the view numbers are this, and then the next day the view numbers are this. Views have gone down. That's very strange. My subscriber base is growing all the time. It grows by about 10, 20, maybe 30 a day every day. Some days I get 1,000 if I got a very popular video, new views. But then the subscriber base, if I don't post for 2 or 3 days, it'll go down by one or two. So that's people unsubscribing or
mm,
not. Now, here's a really interesting thing that I just did. I looked at January this year and January, the 28-day period of that I'm measuring this year, and the 28-day period that I measured for exactly the same time last year. You know, you can customize the dates. I want to look at the 28 days. This time last year, I had 20,000 less followers, and I had the same number of views. Okay, so less followers, but the same number of views. So something is different now. Maybe my content has changed and less people are watching me. Okay, I get that can happen. But here's a really interesting thing. My revenue for that 28-day period was over 800 US dollars. My revenue for this 28-day period is 600 US dollars. I have the same number of views and have 20,000 more followers, yet I have 25% less revenue. Go figure that. I'm being suppressed in so many different ways by YouTube. That's how the algorithms work. I would say I am pro China. I'm not neutral on China. I am pro China. but I'm not negative about Australia, except Australia's policies towards China. I love Australia. I'm very negative about America and America's policies towards themselves, towards the rest of the world, and certainly towards China. So I'm negative about America, but not Americans. I think most Americans that I know are nice people, but I am negative. I'm never negative about Australians. I'm sometimes negative about a particular person, Rupert Murdoch or someone like that, but I'm not negative about Australian people. I love Australia and I love the people. I love living there. I dislike the policies and some of the laws they're implementing, and I'm negative about that aspect of it. So all I am trying to do is promote China because I learned China the hard way. I'm trying to teach people. So I'm being suppressed by that. I often find my number of followers is reduced. Usually the reduction is only one or two,
Mm.
but how many did I get? If I go back and look the day before and see how many followers this video gave me, and now how many followers I've got compared to before I put that video up, I'm losing quite a lot of followers. I might have got 70 new followers from this video, but I'm only 30 up in the day. So
Mm.
40 followers have disappeared. So I wonder if I wasn't being suppressed, how many followers I'd have now. I might be in the million bracket. I might be in the 500,000. I might
Yeah,
have 50,000 more. I don't know. No idea at all. But there's definitely some algorithmic suppression going on there for
yeah.
sure.
Could be the geolocation. They see videos being uploaded from China, so automatically
Well,
algorithms will say,
I use a VPN on stealth, so it doesn't know where I am. I don't think it knows where I am. Sometimes I use an open VPN, then it knows where I am. I'm in China.
right,
Yeah, could be. Could be.
right.
Where should I go? Where's the most popular place to go to upload and get big views?
I
America.
mean, if you upload it directly from America, so many people do that. They make videos in their own countries, then somehow they've got people in America and they upload it from America. I guess so. You can see. So this person whose clip I showed you, he's very big in Australia. I didn't know about him, but I just started receiving his videos. But I see that when I go into his description, it says that the location is America,
Right.
but he's Australian, and he clearly says he's in Australia. So, but he's got a
Yeah,
large following. Yeah,
that could be the use of a VPN in order to avoid social media restrictions that Australia has. Australia has very strict social media rules. I think we
yeah,
both know that.
yeah.
And so he may be avoiding that by posting from. I mean, I post from America, or I think I'm in Sweden today.
Okay,
My VPN I change around, and I think I'm in Sweden at the moment. Certainly, I looked at something yesterday, and I got some very strange language adverse. What's this? I mean, I recognize the language as Swedish, but I didn't realize I was in Sweden. Just check that now. Yeah, Sweden. I'm in Sweden too.
that's good. That's good. So it's a
But it
European
didn't help my
location.
views overnight. It didn't help my
I
views
think.
overnight.
Yeah, I think it depends on the content as well. So obviously, the positive content doesn't really get as much publicity as the negative content. We know that.
There's also some words that are catchwords, and I think I did a video the other day about the drugs. I don't think many people realize this. We keep hearing about this 100,000 deaths a year from fentanyl. That number has dropped off a cliff. It's not 100,000 anymore. It's going to average out to be about 40,000 for this year. It's still too high, but it's half what it once was. And it peaked in 2024, around about June in 2024. Now, who was the president when it peaked? That was Joe Biden.
Yeah.
And it dropped down to its lowest point in January 2025. And that was around the time that Trump was being inaugurated. Now, what caused it to drop? One of the things is the availability of this particular drug, which is very, very easy to administer, and all paramedics are carrying it now, and people are being. You can get this drug, and I don't know if it's free or if it's very easily available. So, someone's taken a fentanyl overdose, shoot them with this drug, and bang, they're back. They don't die. And apparently that, I mean, I don't know much about the medical aspects of this because I haven't really looked into it, but apparently that is a massive factor. Then there's the other factor is that China has restricted every single thing that goes to making fentanyl. So fentanyl has a range of precursors. They're chemicals. Chemicals come from China. They come from China and go to other countries, including Canada, Mexico. India is a huge one. And those are put together to make a drug. Now, that drug might be legal or it might be illegal. It's not China's fault. But what they've done now is they've restricted and controlled. China has the world's strongest controlled drug register now. So they've restricted and controlled these drugs. So the only people who can buy them are registered to buy them, and they're licensed to buy them, and they have a use for them. They have an end user certificate in the same way that governments register military stuff. End user certificate. It goes to the right person. Now, what that right person does with it is not China's fault. But in China, if a person sells these chemicals that make up fentanyl, they can be executed. So China's drug laws are extremely strong. 20 years in prison, execution, these are commonly used. There's people in China waiting to be executed right now, and they will be executed. Some of them are on 2-year probationary periods, then they won't be executed, but they'll still serve 11 years in prison as a minimum. Those people are people who tried to circumvent the drug systems. DEA works with the drug officials here, the government, and it works with the police. In China, DEA used to have 4 officers. Now I think it has 2, and it stopped when Nancy Pelosi came over to Taiwan. And when she came, one of the countermeasures was the suspension of the drug relationship, the communication that was going on. And the DEA left China, but they did keep their offices open in Guangzhou and Shanghai. So the Drug Enforcement Agency are here. China is working with them. China is doing everything that they should be doing in order to help the Americans with their problem, not China's, their own problem, because China is legally creating these precursors for the American market. The American market wants them, and this is legal. They're being prescribed this medicine. They're not stealing it or buying it in the streets. They're being prescribed this medicine. So China legally and legitimately supplies them with the precursors. And if there's anyone gets hold of this stuff outside of China, that is not China's fault. That's a fault of the whatever country it happens to be. And it may be America, it may be Canada, it may be Mexico, Colombia, Venezuela got thrown into this mix. I don't think there's any evidence that Venezuela was ever part of the fentanyl thing. But the fact is, America is actually winning the war on drugs. They've reduced the number of deaths from 2,000 a day to about 800 a day. Now, it's still 800 a day too many on average, but the fact is they have reduced it, and it's continued. It's gone in a declining line. It's continued even under Trump. Now, of course, if I lived under Trump, I'd probably want to take drugs. Luckily, I don't, but that's a different story.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. But the Sackler family hasn't really suffered anything. It's a fisherman,
Of course not, because
Venezuelan
they're importing
fisherman
legal
who
drugs.
died. Yeah, I know. I know. That's what happens. Influential and powerful people don't really get much punishment. Right.
And
I'll
if they
end
do
it
get
here.
punished, they can buy a
Sorry, go on.
pardon.
Yeah.
That's it. If they do
Yeah,
get
but
punished, they can buy a pardon.
yeah, you can give $500 million or even $5 million to the president. You can get a pardon, I guess.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's like
There's a couple of good YouTube people doing that. One of them is a former pardons attorney, and she's talking about this a lot now. Whether she's got it all accurate and true or right, I don't know. But I've done a couple of fact checks on a couple of things I've seen her say, and she's pretty accurate. It
yeah,
looks like she's true.
yeah,
These are she's using documents to back up what she says as well. It's hard to deny, and this is what I say to a lot of people. They say China's not happy. They just tell you they're happy. I said, well, hang on. Have you checked with the Ipsos Global Happiness Index? Because they say China is happy, not me. They actually support my findings. My findings are anecdotal. Theirs are scientifically and methodologically approved ways of finding out if a country is happy.
yeah,
Do Chinese people trust their government? Yeah, the Edelman Trust Barometer says so. and it has a recognized methodology for finding this out. Don't argue with me. Argue with the facts. These are facts. Harvard University says that Chinese trust in government is very, very high. They spent 13 years researching it. Not me.
Correct.
I know this because I talk to Chinese people every day. And yes, you might find someone who hates their government, but they're usually in Washington or London or Sydney. They hate China for a reason. It's not because they're living in China and China's been bad to them. It's because last year, 1,406 fugitives from Chinese justice were brought back to China, and I think $15 billion was recovered. These are people who steal money from China,
Yeah.
leave the country, and they've only got 1,406 of them back in a year. Now they're working on more, a lot more. So yeah, most of them get sanctuary in places like Adelaide, and Adelaide's got quite a few of these people for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe because of Ted Hui, the legislator from Hong Kong, who ended up he's disbarred in Hong Kong and fled to Adelaide, where he's been entered into the bar there. I mean, this is an incredible story of malfeasance. This guy is a or was a legislator in Hong Kong. He's a qualified lawyer, and now he's sitting on the bar in Adelaide, in South Australia. So yeah, Washington has these people. London has a lot of these people. It goes all the way back to pre-Tiananmen Square, where people are just getting shipped out of China because they're useful tools to the American narrative.
Yeah. I saw in London, BYD double-decker buses,
Yeah,
electric
yeah.
electric vehicles. They are
There
operating
are
in
two
London
bus
now.
companies in China that have basically taken over the world with electric buses. I
Yeah,
can't
but
remember
there
the
was an
name of the other
article
one.
as well that
Oh yeah,
China has a kill
they can be
switch
stopped. Mm.
and kill switch, and then some sort of explosion as well, just like what the Israelis do. So yeah,
Yeah,
there's that concern
this goes
also.
back to that same. I mean, let's say there's a kill switch and it can be an explosion can be caused. Okay, so what explodes? Is it the battery? How does this work? How are they shipping explosives into buses across to the UK? I mean, honestly, I don't know how you can do this, but you're an engineer. You know how chips work. I don't, but surely you can look at a chip and say, does this chip have the capacity to explode this bus? And there must be something written in a code that says explode the bus. And if it doesn't have that, then where does this allegation come from? It comes from the same thing we said before. Every allegation is a confession. China's never done this to any other country, but other countries have. And
Yeah,
they're
what kind?
saying China could do that. Yeah, China probably could.
Yeah,
But why do you say they would? Why do you say
yeah,
they might? You say they might
yeah,
because you did. You did. That's
yeah.
the
But what I,
problem. Uh,
what what
go on.
what I don't understand is China is doing business with UK, so they're selling their buses. Why would they
Yeah.
be dumb enough to have a kill switch on their own buses so their future
Well, I think
business
the kill
gets
switch is a
disrupted?
safety factor. In all electronics, there needs to be. I mean, go back to every factory machine that you've ever seen in your life. It has a big red button. It's a kill switch. Now, what we're talking about here, instead of mechanical kill switches, electronic kill switches, they're a safety factor. If this bus reaches a temperature that's just about to burst into flames, let's kill it. That is a good kill switch. Now, oh, we're at war with the UK. Let's stop all their buses. What's
Exactly.
the threat?
Doesn't make
The
sense. I
buses
mean,
don't work. People have to
yeah,
walk to work. I don't
yeah.
know what the threat is there. Oh,
Same
traffic
thing
chaos.
happens. Yeah, go on. Sorry.
I was going to say traffic chaos. What's the problem
Exactly.
with traffic chaos? If you're
Exactly.
at war, who gives a shit if you can't get to work or not on time? So
Exactly.
you work through whatever that is. Now, again, it's not something that China has ever threatened to do. It's not something China has ever done in the past. It's not something China has even investigated or speculated doing. Westerners are saying China could do this. China might do this. China has the capacity to do this. But China's never done this. So why are we suggesting that China will do this when other countries already do this? Other countries kill people through electronic kill switches. China hasn't. China's got these things built in to a machine to prevent overloads, to prevent danger, to stop things from happening. That kill switch is probably not a Chinese guy sitting there like this, or I'm going to need to. There, got it, got it. No, it's an electronic kill switch, and it's built into the system. When certain parameters are reached, the kill switch will. I mean, my coffee machine does this. I've got a coffee machine that has a kill switch. When it gets too scaly, we have to descale it. It's dangerous to drink. It's likely to cause some kind of explosion inside because the pipes are blocked. So it says you can't operate this. There's too much scale on your pipe. So we put in a descaler and then it operates again. Kill switch. That's what they're there for. Stop
Yeah.
things from happening that are bad for the machine and for the user.
Same thing with the laptops. If laptops get too hot, they shut down. Mobile
Yeah.
phones as well, smartphones, if they get too hot, especially in summer over here, they shut down automatically. So it's
Well, in
a
summer
safety
over
issue.
there, they need to.
Yeah.
You're,
It's a
you're
safety
sitting on
issue.
40, 41 degrees or something, aren't you?
Yesterday was 44 degrees. It was okay for me. I
44.
mean, yeah, I mean,
I
it
cycled in
was
45.
windy
I'm just
44. Yeah,
I'm just looking at my weather today. It's 17 to 22. I know
which
that's
is
back to
okay.
front, but seven.
Nice.
Yeah, it's middle of winter.
Yeah, it's nice type of weather. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thanks, Jerry. I'll end it over here. And
Okay.
thanks for the conversation. I'll
It's always
organize
great
another
to
one
chat with
probably
you, Ali.
next week. Yeah.
All
I'll
right. So
stop
thank you,
recording.
and thank you to your audience.
No
We
problem.
should do a live stream one day so your audience can
Sure.
poke in questions as
I
well.
don't really have
And
any
that,
audience. I guess only 10 or 20 people watch my videos. So, yeah. So there won't be any
okay.
questions.
Well,
Yeah.
how about the next time we do this on my StreamYard and we'll
Yeah.
do a live stream
Yeah, that
together.
would be great. Yeah.
Because then my audience can find you.
Yeah. Maybe we can do it next week. Yeah. If you're free, whenever you're free. Yeah.
Sure. Next week I think is pretty good.
Yeah.
The
Should
week
be
after that
okay.
is Chinese New Year, so that's very free. There's nothing going on here at all. Everything except in the evening, lots of parties and visitings and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
yeah, generally during Chinese New Year, it's very boring here.
We had Australia Day on Monday.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Nothing really
Yeah.
happened, I guess. Yeah. There was
I was quite
celebration.
disappointed. A couple of radio stations that I listened to came out and said, Happy Invasion Day. And it's okay. I do get the reasoning behind that, but it's not for public broadcasters to get involved in that, in my opinion. I think that's a thing that the people need to get. If enough people want it changed, then the government needs to change it. That's called democracy. When more people want this than don't want this, then we change this. So I think that's what it needs to happen. If I don't think Invasion Day is a nice word, although I understand why they use it. Australia Day, Unity Day, whatever you want to call it, something that says we and there's been apologies and there's been acknowledgements, but there hasn't been, in my opinion, a proper assimilation between the
Correct.
original Aboriginals, the original Australians, the native Australians, and the people
Correct.
like me and you who came to Australia. We tend, as outsiders coming in, we tend to be much more cognizant of it than people who call
Yeah.
themselves Australians. The
Yeah.
ones who are true Australians have done 1 or 2 generations living in Australia, or even 5 or 6. They have less tolerance towards the natives than people like you and I think.
Especially people
So,
with my background. Yeah. So, because we
yeah,
know
coming
what
from where you come
Aborigines
from.
went through. Yeah.
Mm,
And if you talk to
very true.
Aborigines, you hear all the horror stories as well. Even as late as 1970s, slavery was still being practiced in Australia till 1970s. It was a law. The Aborigine, I forgot the name of the law. It was enacted in 1900 something. Aborigine, and the law's name was Aborigine Safety Law or something like that, where they would take the children from Aborigines
Yeah,
and then give them to white Australians so they can work for free in their houses.
yeah.
It was
They did the
practiced
same
as
thing
late
with
as
the UK.
1970. Yeah.
Yeah, they did the same thing with the UK. With there's a group of kids called the Dreadnought Kids, and they came over on a boat. They were Dr. Bernardo's. Is that Christian Bernardo? I think they were orphans. They were war orphans mostly, and they had no future in the UK, so they were sent to Australia. 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old kids and then handed to rural communities to be dispersed amongst the farming communities so that they could work on the farms. And they're 8-year-old kids, 9-year-old kids, no education whatsoever. They become farm workers. I actually knew one of these guys, and he spent the first 10 years of his life being abused, or 10 years of his life in Australia being abused, physically abused, not sexually, mentally and physically abused by this farmer who owned him. He was owned by the farmer, had paid
Yeah.
money for him to come and
Correct.
be indentured until he was 18 years old. So, I mean, in all that time, he was physically beaten, he was mentally abused, he was tortured, and he ran away when he was 18, and he actually ended up in the Navy, in the Australian Navy. He got an education, and when I met him, he was in his 60s, and he's gone now. In fact, he was murdered, but that's a different story. That's another story for another day. Yeah, he was a pretty bad story, which involved the police. But hey, let's not go down that track. We're getting to the stage where we've done nearly 2 hours of chatting, and it's been great.
Yeah.
So it is probably time that I go and pay some attention to my wife.
Yeah. I'll stop recording now. Thanks, Jerry.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone.